Shalom, Israelite family. Shalom, Israelite family. This is another one of my Israel and Asia, the scattered Israel and Asia episodes. Now I've been making videos for a while now. All praises to the Most High that I'm able to even do this. I'm not a great reader. I don't like to read actually, but I guess God put it on my spirit to do these videos. So I will keep doing them until, hopefully God keeps the spirit on me and nothing ever falls off, and I stay in His truth, and I keep walking. All praises to the camps out there. All praises to my camp for the leadership and the guidance that you have provided. If it wasn't for you guys, any of you camps, and I'm saying all camps, I wouldn't even know this information for myself. So I just say all praises to the Most High to every camp, single camp out there. Hopefully one day we all come to the single unity that we need to be. While I'm on my soapbox right now, by thinking, I'm also going to do some correction here. There are a lot of people, individualites that are out there that are teaching certain things. Please know that we've been coming out of Christianity and out of people's vain opinions for many, many years now. It's almost retarded if you're going to come back out, start your own thing, and come up with your own vain opinions. The Bible says, prove all things. Prove all things. Do not sit on a YouTube channel talking about what you think this is without any evidence, without any facts, without any scriptures. If you don't have the scriptures and the books to back it up, just shut up. Because right now you're destroying your own community. You're destroying other Israelites. Because they're going to some people will follow your tail. And I am saying I'm not 100% correct, but I am saying that if you're going to say something, have evidence. All my videos, I have books and scriptures to back it up. If you don't have books and scriptures to back it up, you're just creating more confusion. So any of you guys come on this channel and see this, I'm lecturing you right now. Go back, check your videos. If you don't have books and facts, put some on there. Prove what you're saying. Don't just say it because you're causing confusion. It's frustrating because I'm seeing stuff and I'm like, what is he talking about? Where's your facts? Where's your books? You know this. So where did you get it? Where's your scripture that proves it? It's a lot of confusion out there, and we're all coming out of bondage and out of this delusion in the first place, and you're gonna just send us right back in there. But so I'm gonna do a video to make sure people understand, because some people are delusional on this side of the world. So I'm trying to make sure I correct that issue. But guess what I'm doing? I'm putting out facts and scriptures every single time. Now, this video will not have many scriptures. I'm just going to have books. My next one will, though. Oh, it's going to be nice. It's going to be wonderful. But let me get off my soapbox because I know you guys don't want to hear about me ranting about this stuff. However, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the longest slave trade that ever existed. The longest slave trade ever existed. Now, here's the thing. Nobody talks about it, but guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to show you facts. The Macau slave trade is by far one of the longest slave trades ever existed, well before the Atlantic slave trade. Macau was trading slaves for years. You just gotta look it up. See, everybody think it was one period of time, early 1700s, and some people think, oh, 17. I'm like, whoa, wait a second. These guys been trading slaves for years. There was blacks in this area for years. In Macau. And if you don't know where Macau is yet, it's in China. So, some importance, the Negro slaves in China under the Tang Dynasty. There were slaves being traded in China during the Tang Dynasty. So, that is what time period? 618 AD. 618. So that slave trade started well before, and here's just a document just talking about the Kunlun. The Kunlun, they called them just the Kunlun. They didn't call them Kunlun Jews. They didn't call them, Hebrew Israelites. They didn't call them any of those names. They just called them the Kunlun people. So it's evidence that these companies, people lived in the South, had woolly hair, dark skin, and commonly known as Kanglang. Now, I had done a video. Macau part 1 talks about these people, but the funny thing is, you're going to see later that that was in the 1600s, and this right here is talking about 600. We're talking about the 600 where the Kunlungs, where Rebecca said the subjectist tribes, the Kanglang and the Kanglang Boho and the Kanglang, so they had different sectors of Kanglang Pisokin. I'm probably saying it wrong. The tribes last mentioned, also known as the Kunlun, which is prophetically akin to Kanglang. So it's just a different sectors. I'm probably saying it all wrong. But in another part of the same volume, it says that the Finu is situated a distance of 70 probably kilometers or meters or something, miles, there we go, 25 English miles to the south. And the country is low and the climate's moist. The people have customs similar to the folks of the Hangwang. In this land are walled towns and palaces. Walled town and palace. Its king, whose name is Kanglang, lived in a 2-story structured building upon a rise terrace. The roof is trenched with leaves. When the king goes abroad, he rides on an elephant, and the inhabitants have black skin and woolly hair. They go out naked. So basically, these are people saying that they were in like luxury right now at this time. These people are living not too bad up in China. Now, we all know, and I know there's an article, that's why I went into my rant at the beginning. There are plenty of facts showing that the original Moabs and Ammons were very dark skinned. Everybody used to be very dark. So we are saying, oh, these people could be anybody, right? These people could be anybody. They could be the Moabs and the Ammons and the Japhites that did go over here. Go to my other videos. You will see that I know that. I use scripture to confirm that. So are we talking about, who are we talking about? Because many of those people had, what they have? They had dark skin and woolly hair. Now, let's go to a couple of sentences. I'm probably sorry, I'm not showing you up in here. There we go. So the inhabitants thereof had woolly hair and black skin, but the inhabitants of the other islands are like the Chinese. Oh, there is some distinction. So down this time, maybe the Chinese started morphing into the long straight hair. Moab started, they did have straighter hair, but now we're saying, okay, well, these are two different people. So we got the Chinese, that's Moab, and these people had dark skin. So they're not talking about Moab. All right, we got that confirmed. Now, let's go down a little bit more. It says, but this is hardly tenable in the view of the fact that the distinction characteristics as this island, and it says the peninsula, but this is hardly 10 psychologists identifying the Kanglang with polar condors or polar condor. He also affirmed that at the time Ying Chang visit, the inhabitants of the islands were who? Negroes. Now, who was being called Negroes? Everybody know they got their book. They said the progenitor of the Negroes. These are not the Hamites, so they're not Ham. We just talk about the Chinese. It's not Japhet. They didn't call Japhet Negroes. They probably called them Negroid sometimes because they were dark. But usually they called Negroes. They were referring to Israelites. They were referring to Israelites. And by the way, these guys were in Canton. Canton and Cantonese had a huge slave trade throughout the years after this. But guess what? This is where majority of slave people came from. They were here living in Canton, or in I like to say Shenem because that is China as well. That's scripture. That's your Isaiah 49. But that's where they were already at there, all the way back from 618. Now let's confirm something. He says, we said what dynasty? What dynasty? The Tang Dynasty. So now we have this map up here. Now this map comes from Mongolia. This is a map from Mongolia, straight from Mongolia. It's not in a book. And we got these names here. Now, if you Google some of these names, you will see that some of these tribes today are being persecuted, and some of these locations and these people today were identified back to the Saka tribes, which has already been confirmed that the Sakas were who? Jews, Israelites. There's a lot of areas in Japan called Saka, Nawasaka. Nawasaka had a huge slave port. Just more facts. But right now we're focusing on the 1,000-year slave trade up in China. So the Shilla Dynasty. It says they were basically that was basically 7 to 935 BAD after Christ, under the sway of the king Shilla, whose descendants rulers were displaced by a new dynasty. So the Shilla dynasty, they had all these different dynasties in Korea, and the chosen dynasty used to be there. Now the thing is it possible the Israelites were there? Well, I'm reading to you that there was people up in China already, up in the Tang Dynasty, riding on elephants. So obviously there were people over here working and living their life and probably migrating, and they were nomadic people, by the way. Nomadic people. So there is facts from books saying the Mongolian Jews were persecuted by Christians during what period? 500 to 609 AD. How is that possible? Oh, well, I also confirmed just now that the Tang Dynasty had Negroids there. The Kanglang guys. There were Kunlun people there already living their lives. So is there a possibility that there were Jews in Mongolia as well? Absolutely. That's facts proving, showing, and confirming that these people were here. So let's keep going. So these were the synagogues. If you when we go forward, this is considered, this name Fu is also considered a part of the part of the Tang Empire. If you look closely, that's as you keep going down, you're going down into Vietnam. You're going down to these Southeast Asia areas, the South China areas. And those areas were always populated with a dark people, with a dark nation. But then, as you read earlier, were they Chinese? No, some of these people were not Chinese. And then here you go. We have a massacre of Jews back in 854. So if you massacre and Jews are being persecuted, who are they being persecuted by? We had Chinese there. We had Japhite there. And when they're being persecuted and massacred, do you not think they were being traded and sold and taken advantage of? So Israelites was in this area trying to rule and trying to live their life comfortably, and they still are subject to persecution, as though the curses has followed them. Another massacre of Jews in a civil war beginning in when? 854 AD, which lasted from, and then it says 875 AD to 900 founded Jewish communities in large cities of China able to speak Hebrew. Same time period. So a lot of people do not identify this time period that Jews were even over there, because guess what? The slave trade didn't happen yet, according to some. But there was Jews being persecuted. Israelites, in fact, not Jews exactly, because don't forget, Jews was the southern tribe. The northern tribe people were over here getting hate mail, getting persecuted, getting massacred, and getting sold into slavery from Macau. Here's proof right here. Like I said before, if you're going to say something, find the evidence. This is a contract of purchasing slaves. So now I just mentioned to you that they were living there on elephants. And here is a Chinese contract purchasing of slaves. So it's not like, oh, they were living, they were ruling at the time. There was no slave trade. Yes, it was. It was a slave trade. This is a contract, a record, purchasing 15-year-old slave and 6 boats and planes of silk and 5 Chinese coins, or 5 Chinese coins in China. There's your proof. They were being traded already, well before the Atlantic slave trade. Let's keep going. A couple years later, 900 AD to 1100 AD. So some people settled in the Great Tartarian. That's up in here, over here in Asia. You know, that's your Mongolians, that's your China, that's the area. This whole area was considered Tartarians. A lot of Tartarians were here, and they were settled here and were living in freedom and in the best arrangements. We just read that. They was riding on elephants with the natives. They were with the natives. They were migrated, integrated. They started mixing with each other. That is true. Hence the reason why they look the way they look now. So they were living amongst them. But I just read just a second ago, there was a slave trade. They were contracts. They were selling them and then putting them in slavery and persecuting them and killing them. Since the leaders were equally chosen among the Jews and the Tartarians, and both of them shared a pinnacle of war. But the Jews did not marry some of the Jews did not marry the Tartarians. So some of the Jews kept their ethnicity and strictly apprehended their own religious codes. It is worthwhile to observe that they think they are descendants of the tribe of Reuben. The tribe of Reuben during this period. Now everybody knows caffeine. You can go back to my other videos. Caffeine is also the same location where we're Shenem. We just talked about the Tang Dynasty, and caffeine is in what? The Tang Empire, and now we got the Song Empire and the Song Dynasty. There were caffeine Jews recorded several times from 400 AD to 1100 AD. 3 synagogues at one time was located in that area. So we just read that it was the Negroes over in Shenem and Canaan in this area during the Tang Dynasty, and now all of a sudden now we got all these Jews and caffeine Jews and records of these people. There's your confirmation. They weren't Japhet. They weren't all Japhet. They weren't all Moab. There were plenty of Jews, Israelites in this area already. And they were sold and persecuted and being murdered already on this side of the world. The sad but true part is that a lot of this information is either hidden or still hasn't been translated yet because of their different cultures and languages. Do your homework. These are facts. I'm not making up stuff. I'm showing you evidence. In 1124, the capital. Within the Tang conquered the northern province, the southern end controlled by the Tartarians, generally with 7,000 Tartarians under his control. So, as I mentioned, was all Tartarians? It's kind of like this. Is all Americans Israelites? No. Is all African Americans Israelites? I don't think so. They might be called African Americans, but they ain't all Israelites. They just called African Americans. All Puerto Ricans Israelites? No. All the Caribbeans Israelites? No. All Filipinos Israelites? No. All Indians Israelites? No. So you can't even say a single population of land is truly all Israelites. So when I say Tartarians conquered and they were Israelites and Tartarians, they were Israelites and Jews in Tartaria, in Asia. I ain't saying they all are. Generalizing gets you in trouble. Now, concentrating and saying predominantly, absolutely. But if you isolate one area and say everybody is, you're fooling yourself. But the Tartarians, some of the Mongolians, some of the Jews of Kafin, there are books on the Jews of Kafin and Shenem, were Israelites. The people in Kafin were, many of them were Israelites. And here you go. Some of them became Muslims. Now I highlight this area because a lot of Israelites, some of my old videos tell you that a lot of Israelites came from this area over here in Bohair. And Bohair is pretty much modern day Afghanistan. A lot of them was migrated into Mongolia or captured and brought into Mongolia under Genghis Khan or enslaved and became Mongolians. As you just read earlier, the Mongolian Jews. They came from Bohair. That's where they came from. Watch the other videos. It's all lined up. I'm not using the same maps this time. I'm actually using the maps that I didn't use before because I didn't have to use this map before. But now I'm using this map. But I just got that circle because I thought I was going to have to talk about this. But now I got this circle because those individuals were Israelites hiding out in Afghanistan. So 1300. Now we move on to 1300. When we first started, we was talking about 600, like 650 AD. Now we already in the 1300s, and we still talk about slave trading. You know that the Atlantic slave trade haven't even started yet. The Atlantic slave trade haven't even started, and if it did, it just got started. And we still talking about the slave trade over here in Asia. And yet, we want to talk about people. We know none of these Israelites over here. In what world? You must be brain dead if you really believe that, or you just don't want. You're not putting in work to do your research. That's all it is. Or you have a lot of biases that's going to get you killed. Say it like that. But we had a huge slave trade, and where did most of them come from? Yemen. Yemen ain't too far from Africa. A lot of them moved or migrated them to Yemen, and they started getting sold into Asia. Here's your slave route. Or they were sold on the Silk Road. Now here you go. Like I said earlier, make sure you got books. Make sure you got evidence. There's a link. I got all this stuff. So make sure you provide evidence when you say, oh, I think they were here. Were they? How can you prove it? Oh, here's a book. Now, these people were Moorish. They were in Macau. They were converted Moors. They were Jews that was converted to become what? Muslims. So every Christian, there's a lot of Muslims out there that are actually Israelites. Or they are Israelites up in Asia, up in Afghanistan even. And I had this on one of my previous presentations a while ago. So African slavery in China peaked during the Tang and Song Dynasty. We were talking about the Tang Dynasty when? In 1900. It shows you right there. All the way to 1279. Now the thing is, slide before that, we was already in the 1300s. We were already moving forward. This continued for many years. Because why do I know that? If you look at the pages of this book, you will see some of these slaves that's coming from Macau is going into the Philippines all the way up to 1571. 1571. This slave trade started back in 960 AD and still is going on in 1571. And they coming from China and they being sold to the South. And these people are still consider them the Kunlun people. By this time, these people are integrated with these people, assimilated with these people. So yeah, they didn't look the same anymore, but they knew who they were. The Kunlun and Tang dynasties were portrayed as by numerous stories as heroic and resourceful. Oh, why were they? Oh, they were resourceful. They was heroic as well. How come? Maybe because they biblical history. Ironically, culturally Chinese. Ironically, because they said ironic meaning like, yeah, they assimilated to these guys, but they're not Chinese. But most Chinese during this period, however, unless they were wealthy, had little contact with African slaves, perhaps explaining the different views of the Kunlun. During the Tang Dynasty, a number of African slaves increased in China. Most from where? Madagascar. And thus indirectly from Africa. But over time they assimilated, and the Arab brought in the Sahara slave trade, basically the Sahara Africas in both areas. Most Kunlun slaves in China lived in where? Canton province. Canton province. By the time they were mostly viewed as displaced people who lacked the ability to adapt to the environment. They spoke Hebrew, that's why. And also they was not from that culture. And they were also described as savages and unintelligent. So how the world are you gonna say they unintelligent? And but a couple sentences up, they said they were what? Heroic, resourceful, and they were heroic and resourceful. But now they savages. Now they savages. This is by far one of the longest slave trades you could ever think of, and it's funny that we're not even talking about it. And that's probably a picture, and who knows what time period this picture was taken. Probably in the early 900s, when these guys truly looked like true Africans. I'm pretty sure these guys were assimilating with these, and they ain't start looking. They weren't looking like that no more. And I got videos on that showing that they assimilated and started looking like the Chinese, started looking like Moab. Now here's another map. Now this map is another map from Mongolia. Now guess what? This map showing the empire of Mongolia. So while the Tang Dynasty was happening, you had the Song Dynasty that was also had slaves there. But as I mentioned to you, in Afghanistan, in Bakar and Shermakan, they was taking slaves and bringing them to Mongolia and to conquer and fight each other. So do you think, was Israel fighting other Israelites over in Asia? Absolutely. Depending on who were their master. They were fighting for Mongolia, or they was fighting for the Chinese. Everybody, a lot of people now know the Great Wall was built by slaves. The Great Wall was built by slaves. And what was the point of the Great Wall? To stop the Mongolians from infiltrating the Chinese, the Moab. So this is how large the Mongolian Empire was during the 1200s. Now, what did they do very successfully? They integrated a lot of other nations, and they all became one, and just rampage and plunge every other nation because they knew how to unite. Guess what? One of the biggest tribes that was in the Mongolian Empire, that was Israel. Gad. Gad was fierce fighters, and Genghis Khan knew that. So when Genghis Khan infiltrated them and took them in, Genghis Khan was very wise in using their power to unite them, and they joined Genghis Khan in fighting the other nations. It's the reason why they was able to conquer so much. You also had Nathalie in there. That's in another side. Just realize these people were all over the place, and you got to know your history. Study some more history in Asia, because guess what? You'll be surprised. Yeah, it's not an easy history to study, to be honest with you. But now you start making sense in the migration of the Israelites in Asia. This is later on. Now I got a book called Asian Slave of Colonial Mexico. So we're still talking about the 1200 AD, and slave trade was still going on in 1500s, 1600s. 1600s is probably when finally the Atlantic slave trade started kicking off really strong. But over here, it was intermingling, slave trades, conquering, fighting, wars, all throughout Asia. All throughout Asia. You had the Kanglangs over here. Like I said, you had Nathalie over here. You had Gadite over here. You had Manasseh over here. Already. And they're in the midst of all this battle. They got to do what they got to do to survive, don't they? So they were trying to survive. Now, eventually, they got sold into slavery just like the rest of us, and they were sold. And now, if you watch my other videos, we already know where they were sold. I'm not gonna go into that because you can watch the other videos to see that. So now, the same book we started off with. The same book we started off with. So realize that the Chinese had the longest slave trade, and yet if you go there, you will barely see a black person. But they had the longest slave trade of Africans or Israelites or whoever you want to call them. They were in that area and they were eventually sold into other areas. Now let's look at this. Let's look at after page 40. Through the situations near Kanglang, it is not a disparity thereof. Why are the terms Kunlun and Kanglang used to describe black people? It is because all ships must pass Kanglang on voyages to and from the South Sea, and hence the name is familiar to mariners who naturally extended this distinction to denote all savage of the South Sea. In this way, the name came to signify black people in general. Okay, let me fast forward a little bit. It says various tribes of South Sea Islanders. So various tribes of South Sea Islanders was also called Kanglang as well. Trying to find out where they got sold. Okay, here we go. It says the Persians envoy to China were accompanied by attendees who had sunken eyes and black skin, who were called Kanglang. It is evident that these black Persian slaves were Hindus. Thus, it would appear that the term Kanglang is here used to designate the Kanglang of the West. So we're talking about the Persian slaves were Hindus. So these talking about Indians right now. However, they calling them the same name. So were they being sold into slavery at this time? Yes, they were. It is my personal opinion, as a writer of the early Ming Dynasty, was responsible for the corruption that changed Kung Tung Sang to Kanglang in his I don't know how to say this. Sang Chang. Gosh, it's like it's a describing of the beautiful isles. He said isles, by the way, which is funny. This mountain rise very high in the midst of the sea forms as it is a triangle with Ching Ching. Oh gosh, and the islands of Du. The mountains is lofty, triangular, immense that extend over a large area. The surrounding seas is known as the Kanglang Ocean. All trade vessels abound for the West Sea passes this point after a voyage of 7 days, provided the winds is favorable. The sailors have a hymn that runs through. Okay, so I don't know why I read that. Anyway, I'm going to just say this. These pages already prove that there was definitely dark-skinned brown people that lived in China that were called Negroes or Kanglang since 600 AD. That's the fact. And it also proved that some of these black people called Kanglang were also sold into slavery, mostly to Southeast Asia. That's where they mostly went. It's the South Sea. They all went to Southeast Asia most of the time. And that's over the other videos. And then at the same time, I also proved that this continued on as late as the 1500s from the same location. So realize China, Canaan, had one of the longest slave trades in history. The longest slave trade in history. Atlantic slave trade don't have nothing on this. Yes, it's predominantly known because of who did it slave trade? It slave traded Judah, the real Jews, the tribe of Judah. But these guys were it was slave trading the northern tribe that fell off a long time ago that no one cared about. But guess what happened? Other nations took advantage of that. They let them mingle and integrate for a little while, and then eventually they put them in the same curse. So just realize Israel is over here. They're all over the place. If you want to use Deuteronomy 28 as your definition of Israelites, realize these people have been in the same persecution. Now, like I said earlier, not all African Americans are Israel. Not all Asians. A lot of Asians are definitely. I mean, of course, Moab and Ammon and Japheth are definitely not Israel, but you got Israel among them. So hopefully you come out of them. I don't know who the ears is going to take, and I don't know who Spirit's going to bear witness with. But I just did this only to show Macau had the longest slave trade in history. No scriptures, but I definitely got facts. So those out there that are not sharing facts, just shut up and get some information first before you start talking. And yeah, I don't read too well sometimes, but at least you can read it yourself. I just put it in your face. All right. Well, you have a blessed day. Shalom to all my Israelite families. Oh shoot! Here I go. I did it again. Second time I've done this. I keep forgetting. I got more books. See, I got more evidence than I thought. Yeah. So here's the slave trade from Macau again, all the way up to the 1600s. So you got every year 5,000 slaves coming from Macau. This is proof. Yeah, you can. It's not on that page, but these people were going to the Philippines. So that's my proof for the Southeast Asia part of it. Like I said, I got this on all my other videos too. They all went to Southeast Asia, mostly the Philippines. And it came from also China. I mean, from India as well. This book right here is a great book, The Survival of the Empire. It tells you all this. If you read, you got spirit bear witness. If you're spirit bear witness, you keep the commandments. You can read right between the lines on this information. It's all here. It's in the book. And I think this should be my last slide. Let's see. Guess I was wrong. Dang, I made this thing and I forgot. Made it the other day. So, and then just realized that a lot of people were practicing Muslim. This is from another presentation as well. And a lot of people knew that these people had Israelite blood in them. Instead of calling them Israel, they called them Moors. So this just shows that the intermixing with the nations kind of had people confused. They thought that, okay, these guys are mixed. There might be Israel. We don't know. So now at this time in this area, they were just grabbing people and assuming, but 9 times they will confirm the Israel, or they just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time and the curse followed them and they got told into slavery. But a lot of times once they went down into Southeast Asia, then it was even more confusing because a lot of people, the Japhites and all of them was down there and no one knew who was who. They didn't. Now it says they are the gray or olive complected, meaning brown and black. That's all, and go naked. We just talked about that in China. But for certain with certain sheets of cotton, they are partially heathen and partially Moor. So heathen is what? That's the other nations, and partially Moor. So if they were saying if they saying heathen and Moor, that means the latter is something else. So what is the latter? The Moor. The Moor is the Israel side of the house. That's what they were talking about. They were partially heathen, mixed with heathens, and they were Israel. But the latter was rooted out. So they're saying that the Israelite was rooted out. That's what they're saying. But if you read in the notes down at the bottom, it says Moors were so far from being rooted out that they were warring with the Spaniards. So they was like, nah, these brothers ain't that Israelite blood ain't rooted out of these fools. They were in here fighting us still. Trying to, because everybody else was just submitting. A lot of the Israelites that had that warrior blood, these could have easily. Now I say don't say stuff you don't got facts, but I got some facts. I know Gad was over here. These brothers probably had Gad blood in them, Gadite bloods in them that were fighting. Because Gad was great warriors. because Gad was fighting for Mongolia. And these people over here, these Moors, were fighting hard for the Philippines. Fighting hard. Many documents on that. So some of the greatest warriors was Gadites. That's a true fact. And then some of these guys that was fighting, I believe, were probably those people from the tribe of Gad. Easily so. We got Nathalia. Everybody knows, not Nathalia, Manasseh is out in the Philippines too. We all know that. So, just read your books in there. Hey, I got one scripture here. There you go. Got Barbers from Acts 22. And by the way, if we want to go scriptures, man, we could easily do that. And I can just go through a whole list of scriptures talking about Israel and Asia if we need to. But I'll be saving that for another video. So I went too long. I went over my time limit. This was 40 minutes, and I don't like that. I like to keep it down to 30. All right. You have a blessed day.